We started a couple of weeks ago speaking about the book of Exodus. And in the book of Exodus, we've managed to, in the last 3 weeks, get through 1.5 chapters. So I guess we're going to be in the book of Exodus for a while. But we're going to look at the second half of chapter 2 today. And my title is this: Trust God's Timing. That's something we all say amen to, but we battle to live that out. You know, Moses was ready to deliver his people from the Egyptians, but it wasn't yet God's time. And we need to remember that our timing is not always God's timing. You know, last week we saw God's hand of protection over Jochebed and her husband and Moses. We saw that Pharaoh's daughter adopted him instead of following her father's instructions to kill him. And today, we're going to see from Scripture how important timing is. Because Moses didn't understand God's timing and he acted out in the flesh, he ended up having to flee. So the first thing that I want to tell you today is don't rush. You know, it's like when you were younger and you had a pair of scissors, your mother said, don't run with a pair of scissors. So hear your mother's voice in your ear today. Don't rush. Because when we do, we wind up with something that is not what it's supposed to be. So, tomorrow is my wife's birthday, so I baked her a cake. I got up early this morning, and I decided I'm going to bake her this beautiful cake. But we were late for church. So I tell you what I did, is I went, pretty good this, actually, I must say. The recipe said that I should mix everything together and then I should preheat the oven to 180 and then I should leave it in there for 40 minutes. But I didn't have 40 minutes. I only had 20 minutes. So what I did was I cranked it up because I figured out, hey, listen, 180 for 40 minutes, 250 for 20 minutes, bam, we got it going. Logical, right? The top of the cake doesn't look that bad. The problem is that I don't think I'd want to eat this cake. See, on the outside, it didn't look that bad. The problem was that on the inside, it hadn't had time to set. You know, I love cooking. But even I've learned, just be patient. You know, the quickest cook in this whole room is Pastor Chris. He takes a piece of steak, he puts it on the fire like this, goes, ch, ch, and then it's ready for him. Oh, did I do it too long? I go, ch, ch. But the thing is this, we have to go through the process. The process has to work in our lives. But too often what we're doing is we're trying to short-circuit the process, get ahead of the line. Ever been in a long queue and then somebody just comes along, pretends like they don't see anything, and then you just go to hello? I go to the Pick and Pay down the road here. Now, two people can stand in front of the till. Then there has to be a gap. You have to let people through. The rest of the people have to stand next to the gondola ends here, so that people can get through. And then you're standing there waiting your turn. There's 27,000 people behind you. And you're like, yes, I'm third in the queue. I'm third in the queue. No, lady, do not buy airtime. Just get through. And you're just about to go, and somebody comes, like, excuse me. The queue starts back there. Oh, really? Yes, really. Because all of us have to wait and go through the process. Unfortunately, Moses learned that the hard way. Between verses 10 and verses 11 of Exodus chapter 2, there's a long period. Bible scholars say that it was approximately 40 years between verses 10 and 11. I don't know why they didn't write anything down there, but anyway, maybe the book of Exodus would have been a lot longer and it would have taken us longer to finish. So the Lord knew. But in Acts, it tells us a bit more about that time. In Acts chapter 7, verses 22 in the Amplified Bible, it says, "So Moses was educated in all wisdom and culture of the Egyptians, and he was a man of power in word and deed." So in this period of time, Moses is getting trained, but he's getting trained by the Egyptians. He's going through all of these processes. I mean, think about the first 40 years of Moses' life. He knew he wasn't an Egyptian. He was born a Hebrew. I mean, think about this. Just imagine you get taken into Elon Musk's house. They accept you as family. Some of you are going, please prophesy, Pastor, prophesy. You've got anything in the world that you want. Money's no object. But you also know that your birth parents and brother and sisters are outside. You know that they're living in a rundown house, not making ends meet, starving, working 3 or 4 different jobs and never moving forward. Would you be able to live in that house in complete peace and perfect content? No, you'd be thinking about your family. You know, when I was preparing this, I remembered I had an uncle. He passed away a number of years ago. And what happened is I didn't know him. And I was 15 years old. I was suspended from school. I was at home. And the next thing, this dude rocks up at our house. My father's like, this is my brother. He's going to be staying with us for a while. And I was like, who is this dude? Where did he come from? You know, I noticed my dad going out, and we didn't have much. My dad went out and bought him clothes and got him some new shoes because he had some raggedy old shoes on. And he came back and he started to look like really smart. And him and I got to spend a lot of time together in the 3 months that I was suspended from school, because he was there all the time and I was there all the time. And after he passed, my dad finally told me what had happened. He hadn't seen his brother in many years. Lost track because of circumstances. He had been a very intelligent engineer, had a high-paying job, had a lovely house and a family, and sadly his son died, and he lost his way. He lost his job, he lost his house, lost his family. Because he thought he could find solace in the bottom of a bottle. And when my father found or was told about him again, he was living in a box on the Marine Parade in Durban, on the street. And my father, even though we didn't have much, couldn't bear the thought of his brother living in that box. Can you imagine Moses? He's got everything that he could possibly want. And he knows where his brother and his sister and his mother and his father are. Can you imagine that pain in his heart? And so we get to the point of verse 11. It says, one day Moses had grown into adulthood. It happened that he went to his countrymen and looked with compassion at their hard labors, and he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his countrymen. You see, when he went, he saw the burdens of these people. He saw the hardship they were going through. It's like when we do our food distribution. You get to see a person's hardship. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we handed out the cards for the guys to get a card, and then they guaranteed a food parcel for 6 months. Guys off the street. We were handing out the parcels on the Wednesday, the cards on the Wednesday at 2 o'clock. On Tuesday morning, 8:30, Pastor Chris phones me. He says to me, the people are queuing up. I said to him, dude, it's the wrong day. It's Tuesday. We opened the gates of the church that night. We told the people, come inside the church grounds, because they were outside at night. And they wouldn't come in because they didn't want to lose their place in the queue in case they didn't get food parcels. Talk about desperation. Ask yourself this question. When last have you been that desperate? You may say, Pastor, but I'm struggling. Yeah. But the people that are desperate will take your struggle any day of the week. Any day of the week. And so here's Moses. He's seen the struggle. And then he sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his countrymen. And so in verse 12 it says this. He turned to look around, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. Moses, my kind of guy. Just kidding. I mean, he looked around. He knew what he was about to do was the wrong thing. Ever been driving in your car and somebody does something? You're like, come on, dude. And the next thing you go, oh, didn't that look like somebody from the church? And then when you get next to them again, someone's always watching. You see, at that point, Moses came to a place of no return. And some of us think we've gone so far that there's a point of no return. But I want to tell you this, God's love is everlasting to everlasting. You know, I love the chapter 7 of the book of Acts because it gives us more detail about what's going on. It says there in verse 25, he expected his countrymen to understand that God was granting them freedom through him, assuming they would accept him, but they did not understand. Ever gone to tell somebody about the Lord and they're like, you? You telling me about Jesus? I know all of your warts and everything else that's been going on in your life. How can you come and tell me about Jesus? Let me tell you the answer to give that person. This is no longer the old Shaun. This is the new Shaun. And that's how I can tell you about Jesus, because the old Shaun is dead. The new one is alive. Don't use the name Shaun, because they'll wonder what's wrong with you. Use your name, okay? Except if your name is Shaun. And so verses 13 and 14 says this. He went out the next day and saw two Hebrew men fighting with each other. And he said to the aggressor, why are you striking your friend? But the man said, who made you prince and judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? Then Moses was afraid and said, certainly this incident is known. Moses was ready to deliver his people, but they weren't ready. When Pharaoh heard of this matter, he tried to kill Moses. Then Moses fled from Pharaoh's presence and took refuge in the land of Midian, where he sat down by a well. Is there something that you're trying to rush God on? Is there a circumstance that you're dealing with that you're like, God, I need you to do it, and I need you to do it now. And then now doesn't happen, and you're like, come on. What's going on? Sometimes we need to realize that God is working through a process in us so that it's best for us. Because we only want the for us to be dealt with, but God's more interested in the in us, in our hearts, in our lives. God is interested in that. You know, we rush into a lot of things. We do things, and then we expect God just to bless it. There have been many people that have come to me and say, Pastor, I've decided this. Can you pray for God's blessing? I say, did you speak to the Lord about it? No, but I want His blessing. That's not the way it works. You know, we have a way of thinking as human beings. To ask forgiveness is easier than to ask permission. But that's not the way it's supposed to work. And we need to remember that God's timing is always best. We should never give up. When we face that challenge and that hardship, we should be ready to go through it, no matter the circumstances. But that's easier said than done. I know. It's easy to stand here and say, oh, well, go through it. But when you're in it, it's a totally different thing. After I got born again, I heard a message about serving God with your whole heart. I was like, great, I'm going to serve God with my whole heart. And so I went to see the children's church pastor. I said to him, can I come and help in the children's ministry? He's like, sure, you can come back next week. No, actually, he didn't say that. He told me I could come back next week only if I wasn't coming there just to be with Karen. That's actually what he said. But in any case, I'm in. I'm ready to do this thing. And so on Wednesday night, I go to home cell. And I get to home cell, and the home cell that I went to had a few families with a number of children. So I'm like, hey, I'm practically a children's church teacher. I'll take care of the children tonight. So the home cell leader and his wife say, sure, there's a room. Take all the children inside. Well, we did praise and worship together, and then I had to take them. And I get into this room. And I know you're not allowed to use this word in church because people don't like it. But all H-E double hockey sticks breaks out in that place. H-E-L-L. I mean, it is bedlam. Children are crying. Others are screaming. Some are pulling others' hair. I'm like, stop, don't. About 3 minutes later, the door opens. It's the home cell leader's wife. She took one look at this. She said to me, perhaps it's best that you go back into I'll take care of this. I don't know what magic she had, but they stopped screaming and fighting immediately. But I'm practically a children's church teacher. And so I get to children's church on that Sunday. I'm feeling pretty spiff with myself. I'm ready to do this thing. And they have a quiz. Boys against girls. And the boy helpers and teachers are in the boys' team. And the girl helpers and teachers are in the girls' team. And there's competition. And they start asking all kinds of questions. Like, who was Jesus' mother? Like, even I know that. And I'm waiting. And we get right to the end. And then they have a question for the teachers and helpers. Well, I didn't even know that person was in the Bible. I had no idea. In fact, some of the questions that they asked, that the children answered, I was like, are you getting this from Encyclopedia Britannica, or where are you getting this stuff from? And so they asked me the question for the boys. For the win. 3 points. Bzzz, the buzzer went. I had no clue. I didn't know what to say. I was like, And the girls get to answer the question. And Karen, the love of my life, the woman who loves me most of all, answers the question. She could have mouthed it to me across the room. But she didn't. She answered the question. Do you know that every boy in that children's church gave me dagger looks? They were like, you didn't know the answer to that question? What is wrong with you? At that point, I realized that I might practically be a children's church teacher, but I wasn't ready. It took a whole lot of training and a whole lot of studying the Word and a whole lot of all kinds of stuff, cleaning up and all of those things. But I stuck it out, and I was a children's church teacher for 30 years. I started when I was 4, just by the way, just so that you all know this. But we need to go through the process. Don't rush it. Don't go ahead of God. Listen to what the Holy Spirit is telling you. Follow what God has put in place. You know, Moses was strong enough. I mean, he killed the Egyptian. So he had the strength. But that wasn't the place to do what he needed to do. And so God then had to bring him to a place where he would walk for another 40 years being a shepherd, because God was teaching him, because the Bible tells us that he was the shepherd of the children of Israel. He became a father, and he learned what it meant to be a father, because he walked with the people through that desert, shepherding them and being a father to many. Do not discount the process you're going through right now. See, Moses learned in Egypt how to be somebody. In Midian, he learned how to be nobody. And pretty soon he was going to find out that God can use anybody. And that's the truth. See, as we grow closer to God, he will show us and birth things in us that he has in store for us. Psalm 31 verses 14 and 15 says, Lord, I'm desperate, Lord. I throw myself upon you, for you alone are my God. My life, my every moment, my destiny, it's all in your hands. So I know you can deliver me. That should be our attitude. God, I know you can deliver me, no matter the circumstance. No matter what I'm going through right now, no matter where I've messed up, you can deliver me.